First lesson we're going to do is in musictheory.net. So we're going to do under lessons. We're going to scroll down. First one we're going to do is just generic intervals. So that's where we're going to start. And again, here it kind of tells you an intervals. It measures the distance between two notes. Again, not in reference to time, just pitch or frequency. So the generic intervals, meaning we're not going to worry about whether or not that's a major interval, a minor interval, an augmented, perfect, a diminished. None of that's going to matter at this moment. Okay, it's just specifically how far away is an F to a C. Doesn't matter if it's an F sharp, C sharp, C flat, doesn't matter. Okay, it's just purely the letter. Okay, so for example, the first thing we're going to talk about is when two pitches occupy the same line or space in reference to, if you have a C and a C, right? They're both occupying the same line. Okay, so we refer to that as an interval of a first, or sometimes if you really want to get technical and into some theory terms, you can call it a prime. Okay, so a prime interval. Oftentimes in band class, you'll hear us refer to this particular interval as a unison, but we're not going to use the term unison just because unison is so specific that it has to be the exact same pitch. And what we're going to see here in a second, I'll go ahead and show you, and I'll go back. Um, that right here, you see there's a C and a C sharp. Obviously, that's not a unison, but it's still an interval of a first or a prime. Okay. So we've got C to C, D to D, E to E, just other examples. Okay, you can do that anywhere on the staff. Doesn't have to be treble. It can be bass. It can be way up here, anywhere on the staff. So, and like I showed you before, it doesn't matter if it's sharp, flat. Okay, it can be a D to a D flat, a D to a D sharp, a D to a D double sharp. None of it matters. It's still a first as long as it's a D to a D or a C to a C, okay, or an A to an A. It doesn't matter. It's still a first because we're talking about our generic intervals first, okay? As they get further apart, the way that you're going to count this is you're going to start by saying, okay, here's my first note, C. And I'm going to count that as a 1. And then I'm going to go up by letter names or note positions. So C is 1. That's my starting note. D is 2. And that's my next note. Okay, whether it's from here to here or if they're stacked on top of each other, it doesn't matter. Okay, it's an interval of a second. Okay, because remember, you got to count your first note and continue counting up until you get there. And you'll see that right here as we continue on. So you can see I've got a C, and then I would go to a D, and then to an E, right? Because I just continue up my letter names, C, D, E, and I got 3. So that's an interval of a third. I hope you guys are understanding this. I can even start here. From an E to a G, I go E, F, G, right? So I just go up. I'm not worried about any accidentals or anything like that. Okay, it's just purely line, space, line, space, line, space. Okay, so E, F, G. Okay, or D, E, F. Okay, so that's my third. Okay, fourth, C, D, E, F. Right, as you can see right there. And again, whether it's counting interval through a melody where one note followed by the next note followed by the next note, if we want to see what those intervals are, or if we're playing a chord, all those notes at the same time. Okay, we'll count those intervals just the same. Okay, more examples. I'll move through this really quick because there's no sense in me counting through all these. You kind of get the idea. Okay, so your fifth, your sixth, your seventh, and then your eighth. Oftentimes in band class, you'll hear us refer to this interval of an eighth. We like to call it an octave. All right, so that one's a little bit more interchangeable. You can say an eighth or an octave, as opposed to where I was talking about, we're not going to use the term unison when we're talking about intervals. We can get away with calling an eighth and an octave. And if you'll notice, if you're like flute players, trumpet players, clarinet players, you guys see in your music kind of frequently, not as much for the trumpets, but flute and clarinet, you'll see it pretty frequently. You'll have a line of notes, and it'll say 8 VA, and we just call it an octave. That means go up an octave, right? Um, this is where that comes from, right? Because it's an interval of an eighth. Okay, so 8 VA is going to tell you play it up an octave. Or for trombones, tubas, well, trombones, you can have 8 VA go up an octave. But sometimes you guys will even see a term called 8 VB, and that means to go down an octave. So that 8 comes from that. Every now and then, piano players sometimes will see uh, a symbol that says 15 VA, and that means go up 2 octaves. And if you think about it, you're probably like, well, 8 times 2 is 16. So why doesn't it say 16 VA? So let's think about that for a second. We're going to count real quick. We're going to go. If I want to go up 2 octaves from this C, then I'm going to end up not at this C because that's 1 octave. I'm going to go up to the C2 ledger lines above, right? So do this with me real quick. We're going to go C, D, E, F, G. I can't move my arrow. A, B, C, D, E. I'm at 10. That's this E right here. Start at this F, 11, 12, 13 for the A, 14 for the B, 15 for the C. And we're not wrong. Don't think that we counted wrong. Don't think that our math was wrong. Okay, 2 octaves up from C to C is 15. Why? Because when we count the first octave, we count this note as 1. When we get to the second octave, we don't recount this one. Okay, so that's why, if you're really thinking about it, and if you don't understand, ponder on it for a day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, and sit down, write it out, and then you'll be like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, so just a little extra tidbit for you there. Okay, here's a little chart. I would snap a picture of this or write it out on a piece of paper because it's going to come in real handy. So this is just your generic chart for intervals going anywhere from first, or remember we called it a prime, all the way up to an eighth, or sometimes we'll refer to it as an octave. Okay, so you got your first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. Some of the intervals you guys are the most used to hearing us refer to would be the first, the third, and the fifth, because we talk about chords in class a lot, and we say, okay, who's got the first, or who's got tonic, who's got the third, who's got the fifth, right? So now you can kind of see that and how that fits in there. If you have any questions, let me know. If you want me to re-explain something or make another little video to re-explain something that I didn't do well, just let me know and I'll help you guys out. Thanks.